Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mike. How's it going? So today we are going over guides packed with all this wonderful gear here on the table. You'll have two views, one from the camera and one from here. So let us get started with the bag, number one. Okay, so this is my guide bag. This is the Deuter Guide 35 Plus. This bag has been with me for many hundreds of tours throughout the past 4.5 years roughly. So this is my guide bag. It's been through a lot, but this is a very nice bag. Now what makes it a good guides bag? Let us jump in. So I'm going to put this on the table here. We're going to get down to the GoPro. So when we're looking at a bag, what I want to consider number one is to make sure the bag can hold ice axes. So as you can see here, this bag has ice axe attachments for 2 ice axes. It is meant to hold ice axes. We have 2 buckles here. We have 2 straps here. So this is the first thing you want as a guide. Make sure you can hold ice axes. Number two, if I look at the side of the bag here actually, the side of the bag has attachments. I could put skis through here and I could actually hold the skis on the back on both sides. So this bag is a nice multi-sport bag, and this is something I've used for many ski touring times. I've of course done many hundreds of glacier hikes with this and a lot of personal expeditions as well. Let's move on to, last thing I want to talk about actually. This bag as well has something called a brain. Now what is a brain? A brain is the top of the bag here. And compared to, for example, the Arc'teryx bag, which doesn't have a brain, and other bags don't have brains either, this allows me to have things that are quickly accessible just in the top of the bag, right? So I really like having a brain of the bag. And then when you don't use it, I can just tuck it into the bag itself. And that's when I don't need it and it just goes away. So that's another feature that I actually like a lot on my bags, is to make sure that I have a brain on my bag. Let us talk about the fit of this bag and some features we're looking for in a guides pack. So in a guides pack, number one, you're going to be carrying this for many tours, and it's not a light bag, right? So you want to make sure that you have really good hip support here, a nice hip belt. This hip belt gives me 2 attachment points for 2 gear loops here, so I can attach things to the gear loop after I've quickly done an anchor or something. I could just put the ice screw here. This is very nice. A lot of support here, very thick hip belt. The next thing I want to consider is to make sure I have a good sternum strap, and this sternum strap allows me to adjust the weight across my chest so I can really get a nice kind of customized fit. And this is literally my favorite bag. But there are many bags like this. Just look for these features. So let us take off the bag and jump into our actual rest of the gear in the guides pack. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the gear in the guides pack. The first thing we have in the guides pack at the bottom, and I have it in a dry bag for me, is my rope. This is a 40-meter static rope. Now, why static versus dynamic? Of course, static gives maybe only a few percent stretch, dynamic up to 30% stretch. They're cheap, right? Static ropes are much cheaper, and unfortunately clients step on your gear sometimes and step on your rope, so then you have to replace the rope, or you puncture your own rope. This is a cheap rope to replace. Also, when you're doing ice climbing and lowering clients over the edge, there's very little stretch, so you can more control them over the edge so they don't go head over heels. All right, so I really like the static rope for this. Now, my rope is flaked in my bag, which means that I can easily pull it out without getting tangled. So if I need to do a rescue or access my rope, I can very quickly access it. And I just leave this hanging out of the bag and attach it to something on the outside. This is of course the Grivel, the triple locking carabiner here, directional, of course, as required by the new standards for the association. Let us jump into the next thing I have. This is my full crevasse rescue kit here. We're not going to talk about what's on it right now because we'll have a separate video about that, but this is just my standard crevasse rescue kit with 2 screws, pulley, roll lock or micro traction, prusik, slings and stuff. The next thing I have in my bag is I have an extra layer. This is an extra puffy here. And this is called my oh crap puffy, which basically means if I get super cold, I wear this, but 99% of the time this is for clients, right? When they get cold or they get wet or something happens, I put this on and they feel nice and warm. So I carry this for clients. The next thing I carry always, even if it's not raining, is a Gore-Tex. A Gore-Tex top layer. For me, this has just made me warm in many conditions. When you're on Breda Mercurial, for example, or many out-like glaciers, it's the wind that gets you very cold. So when you have the Gore-Tex layer on, that is a wind-breaking layer that's non-insulating. So very good. I use this, as I said, all the time. Next thing I want to consider as well is I have a full first aid kit here. This is a standard first aid kit. I did go through it. When you get a first aid kit, guys, please make sure, don't just assume what's in the first aid kit. Go through your first aid kit. Also, if you've been in the rain, dry out your first aid kit, because there's nothing worse than opening a first aid kit and the stuff is moldy or has mildew or can't be used anymore. So you have to know what's in your first aid kit. We're not going to go over it right now what should be in it, because you should know, but we can make a different video about that to give you an idea of what I keep in my first aid kit. I also have in my bag, I have a SAM splint here. This is a really great tool. We talked about it in Wilderness First Responder, how to use a SAM splint, but this is something I carry in my guides pack, and of course hasn't been taken out of the packaging yet, thankfully. Next thing I carry, this is an emergency shelter. You can carry something like this, or you can carry a tarp. Now this is very useful, and make sure that it has a capacity for the number of people on your tour, because different shelters have different capacity. For example, this is only fits, I think, 3 people. If I'm on a big tour, I carry one with 8 people or just an 8-person tarp. 2 things this helps with. Number 1, if you're on a longer tour to an ice cave and you're exposed to a lot of wind, the clients will get cold and they will immensely appreciate just getting out of the cold. They can eat their snacks in the emergency shelter. You can have fun, you can joke in there. Everybody gets a little warmer, so it's really nice psychologically for the client. Also, worst case scenario, if something happens and they have to be pulled off the glacier, you can actually just wrap them in this emergency shelter and you can help get them down the glacier, right? You can also use a tarp for the same purpose, but these are very useful tools, so I always carry an emergency shelter with me when I'm guiding. And let's continue now. So the next thing I'm going to talk about here are communication devices, right? There are many types of communication devices, but most importantly, whatever your company has. For me, Glacier Adventure, we all have Tetra Communication, which has a direct connection to search and rescue, right? This is a really good device, very expensive device, unfortunately. You're talking about at least 100,000 ISK, and you also have to have your own channel pre-programmed, so this can be an expensive device to have. Companies will typically have, either everyone has this, as in Glacier Adventure, or you have one of these, or a few of these among the guides, and most of the guides would have a VHF communication, which is basically line of sight communication for the most part. Much cheaper, but you can easily talk to each other if you're a few tours on a glacier. VHF is great to have. There are other devices as well. For example, like the InReach device. InReach device is great, has connection to GEOS, the search and rescue. They can basically talk to search and rescue here in Iceland and get you rescued if something happens. Also live satellite tracking as well. Super cool. So let us continue on to the right side of the table now. So I'm going to go through the upper section here. Now what I also carry in my bag, and this saves me so many times, is I carry a full crampon. I carry a full crampon, disassembled, sharpened for winter. Okay, so this is a full disassembled winter crampon. Now on the crampon itself, I want to point out something very important. What I'm pointing to here, this small clip here, is called the feather. These feathers go often, especially with older crampons. So with this new crampon, make sure this feather either is new or in very good condition. Sometimes I even carry a second feather when we're doing a lot of bigger tours, just in case, because sometimes guides will break a crampon or client breaks a crampon, and it's great to have this extra feather. So I have this kind of coiled on itself and put in a smaller bag that I have for, this is actually the bag for my BD Kolar, the small ski mountaineering harness I use when I do general glacier hikes. I also carry zip ties. Zip ties are super useful. I've used them many times to put back together crampons when something broke, or it's just a great tool to have, and they're super light, so I carry zip ties as well, as we can see here. The next thing I always carry as well, especially when we're doing ice cave tours, because I'm Breidamörkujökull, for example, compared to Sólheimajökull or Svínafellsjökull, or Fatijökull, we guide here ice cave tours with micro spikes, right? So I always carry an extra pair of micro spikes with me if I'm doing an ice cave tour, but just in general, I carry it in my bag as well. Most of the year I carry extra micro spikes with me. The next thing I carry as well, let me grab all 3 of these here. I carry extra center bars. Now notice I have 3 center bars here. I have 2 that are for the black diamond and 1 that's for Grivel. I carry, because I have Grivel crampons as a guide, we're going to talk about that later, but this is a Grivel crampon center bar. So if you have Grivel crampons, make sure you have the center bar for your crampon. This is a Grivel standard center bar. I also carry 2 center bars for clients. I carry the standard flex center bar and the extra long flex center bar, right? And it doesn't matter, you can flip them and they're for both shoes. Even though there's a slight bend here, just turn it the other way and it's for the other foot, right? So you can carry, they're universal. But I carry one long one and then one standard one. Very important. If you have a client with big feet, they need to make sure you're not going to fit them with a size 48 shoe into a standard crampon with a standard center bar if it needs to be replaced. So always carry extra crampon bars as well. Now for ice axes, what I typically carry, I have two different ice axes, but today we're just going to talk about the one ice axe I carry. This is a straight shaft Stubai. This is a really good guiding axe, very heavy at the head, a very strong adze here, or the shovel as you see. This is great for making steps, great for terrain modification on the fly. So this is something that I carry as well. I sometimes carry a hybrid grivel axe. We're going to make a video after this about different types of ice axes and crampons, so check it out. But if you're going to invest in an axe, a Stubai is a great axe to invest in. So this is something I've used for many of years. Let's continue. We're going to talk about the crampons that I carry as well. So now these are Grivel G12 crampons. Now you'll notice the standard crampon for clients is not the G12. The standard crampon is most likely your black diamond contact strap. As I said, a different video will cover this information. But for a guide, of course we have 3/4 stiff shoes or full stiff shoes. We have the semi-automatic crampon where we have this clip back here and we have the basket in the front. Of course the Grivel, so I have the new Grivel center bar. Make sure your crampons are sharpened for winter use, of course, since we're guiding in the winter right now. But they're always good to be sharpened even if you're guiding in the summer. The next thing I carry in regard to gloves, so I have this pair of wool gloves here. This is just for clients only, right? Many of times clients have gotten cold hands and have thanked me profusely, and you get those tips, right, when you give them a nice pair of warm gloves. They feel very good about this. The next thing I have for me personally is I have my pair of working gloves if I'm working with ropes, because destroying the Punisher gloves is very expensive, which I've done a few times unfortunately. So I have a cheap pair of gas station gloves for quick rope work. And then when I get a little colder, I'm just walking in cold conditions like it is now here in February on Breda Mercuriokut, I have these Punisher gloves, right? So these are really excellent gloves to carry. I like them a lot and I've used them now for a few years. Of course, different versions of them, or newer versions of them. So this is the standard guides pack. Oh, the last thing I want to mention, completely almost neglected to mention this, but we got it. All the way on the end here, last but not least, this is what's in the brain of my bag. So we talked about the brain, which is this top section up here, and what I carry in there are gloves. I carry both of my gloves as well as the client gloves in there. But I also carry a little waterproof bag, and in that waterproof bag I have a few things. So let's talk about each. Here I have a headlamp, right, and this is, of course, I carry this almost all the time, less we're talking about in June here in Iceland when we have a majority of daylight. But I carry a headlamp. I also carry a Leatherman. So this tool, a multi-tool in a bag, because the waterproof, this dry bag isn't as dry as I would like it to be. But this is a multi-tool. This is amazing to use for many things, especially, for example, you get a carabiner that gets locked up and you just can't undo that gate, then you could or you can't unscrew it, then you could just grab it with the multi-tool and really add a lot of leverage and undo that. You could cut things, you have a screwdriver, so it's great to have a multi-tool with you as well. Something I carry as well is I carry some face cream and I carry some lip cream. This is sunblock, right? And definitely the face cream is going to be great for clients. They're going to forget the sunblock, so I have this as an extra for them. But long term, I put sunblock on most days because I like my skin on my face, so I want it to stay there. So it's good to have this. The next thing, I have a small first aid kit, and this is mostly a blister kit, right? And some band-aids, because that's going to be the most common injury that you have, right? And I have some painkillers here in blister packs, so the clients would take it out themselves. I have a few zip ties, scissors, tweezers, the long band-aids I could cut into strips, and here I have some antibacterial cream that I could put under the band-aid. So this is just a blister kit that they carry, and the most important part of the blister kit, of course, is high-quality tape. Right, so this is Leuco tape. This is a very high quality tape, fairly expensive, about 2,500 ISK a roll. But I buy this, and I mean, this saves me personally as well when I'm doing very long tours. So this is my kit here. This is everything. I'm fairly certain. So that's the guides pack, guys. If you have any questions about the guides pack, leave it in the comments or contact me personally, and I will be more than happy to walk you through it. Until next time, this is Mike. Shangalauban.